Hello, welcome to the Masterclass 2022 brought to you by Geosaki. This is a special episode on open standards for making geospatial data more fair by Open Geospatial Consortium. Geosaki is grateful to Dr. Nadine Aleme, Dr. Bob Hobonna, and Mr. Scott Simmons from Open Geospatial Consortium in putting together this video for us. Thank you so much in joining our effort to educate the masses. A little brief description about Dr. Gob Hobonna, who is the speaker for this video. Dr. Gob Hobonna is the OGC's Director of Product Management Standards. In this role, he manages coordination between standard working groups and set priorities for standard development in cooperation with SWG chairs. He also provides oversight of OGC application programming interface, evolution, and harmonization activities. He identifies opportunities for investment in SWG participation, innovation program initiatives, and compliance test development. He monitors and participates in SWG activities, as well organizes sprints to advance standards or verify their design. He is also accountable for the compliance program and is responsible for knowledge management. Mr. Simmons, who has also supported in the preparation of this video. Mr. Simmons is OGC's Chief Standards Officer. In this role, he provides oversight and direction to the consortium's technical and program operations and deliverables. Mr. Simmons also continues to lead the OGC Standards Program, where he ensures that standards progress through the organization's consensus process to approval and publication.
Good day, everyone. My name is Bob Hobonna, and I work for the Open Geospatial Consortium, known as the OGC. I'm going to talk to you about open standards for making geospatial data more findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. First, an introduction to the OGC. The OGC is a standards development organization that serves as a hub for thought leadership, innovation, and standards for all things related to location. The OGC is an international consortium with more than 500 member organizations from the public, private, and academic sectors. Our mission is to make location information more findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And we do this by applying a proven collaborative and agile process that combines consensus-based standards, innovative research and development, and partnership building. If we consider many of the technology trends that are making an impact across society, we'll notice that many of those technologies either generate or consume geospatial data. For instance, new sensors, as well as small satellites, LiDAR technologies, the Internet of Things, as well as drones and other autonomous systems. They all generate geospatial data, and in some cases also consume geospatial data. Other technologies, for instance, 5G communications, similarly involve either the generation or the transport of geospatial data. Cloud computing and edge computing involve the processing of vast amounts of geospatial data. Augmented reality and virtual reality enable us to visualize vast amounts of geospatial data. Artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies help us to understand geospatial data. And we're then able to apply many of those technologies to mitigate the effects of disasters, as well as pandemics and other global challenges. So how do we make geospatial data more findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable? We do this by developing and adopting open standards. Open standards refer to rules, guidelines, and frameworks for creating interoperability between servers, sensors, computers, and other devices. The OGC develops open geospatial standards. An OGC standard is a document established by consensus and approved by the OGC membership that provides rules and guidelines aimed at the optimum degree of interoperability in a given context. OGC members come together several times a year to discuss the requirements and various aspects that need to go into standards that address specific contexts. What you can see on the slide is a photo taken at an OGC member meeting back in 2018. We typically hold 3 or 4 of these meetings per year. And in between the member meetings, we hold several telecons or teleconferences. What you can see on this slide is an overview of the OGC standards architecture. The standards are organized into different themes, different aspects. So we've got here, for instance, standards that relate to discovery of resources, other standards that relate to syndication and publishing and subscription, other standards that relate to data containers, as well as others that relate to services and application programming interfaces. We have another group of standards that relate to data models and encodings, and another group that relates to sensors. Just picking a few from the list. For instance, amongst the services and API standards, there's the WebMap Service or WMS standard, which is one of our most popular standards to date. There's also the Web Feature Service standard, also known as the WFS standard, which has been adopted by several organizations and several international communities as well. There's the GeoPackage standard, which is supported by a number of various geographic information systems. And last but not least, there's the OGC API suite of standards, which specify the building blocks to spatially enable web APIs in a consistent way. I will next focus on the OGC API standards. So OGC API standards refer to a suite of standards that spatially enable web APIs in a consistent way. Why are we interested in OGC API standards and the standardization of web APIs? Well, APIs are a very effective and popular enabler of rapid software development. What we have found as a standards development organization is that typically where there are no standardized elements between web APIs, that can lead to a situation of a degradation of interoperability. So the OGC has embarked on a multi-year program to develop OGC API standards that enhance geospatial interoperability between web APIs. On this slide, you can see an overview of the OGC API standards. The approved OGC API standards are those in the green borders, the ones with the green borders. And then the candidate OGC API standards, that is those that are still in development, are shown with the light blue border. Starting from the top left and working our way down, we have OGC API discrete global grid systems, which specifies an interface for accessing resources that have been organized according to discrete global grid systems. These are tessellations of space on the Earth into cells that are typically equal area and also at different levels of detail. We have OGC API records, which specifies an interface for accessing metadata records. Typically, those records are part of a catalog. OGC API maps, which specifies an interface for accessing electronic maps and charts. OGC API styles, which specifies an interface for accessing portrayal information such as styles and symbology. OGC API moving features, which specifies an interface for accessing vector feature data that is representing moving features that are modeled according to the OGC moving features standard. OGC API tiles, which specifies an interface for accessing tiled resources, such as map tiles and vector tiles. OGC API common, which specifies the foundation building blocks on which other OGC API standards are built. The dashed green border is to indicate that OGC API common has been approved. However, it's still to be published. OGC API routes, which specifies an interface for accessing transport or routing information. OGC API environmental data retrieval, which specifies an interface for accessing spatial temporal data, such as is found in environmental data resources, such as meteorological data, hydrogeological data, and other forms of data that contains both space and time artifacts, dimensions. OGC API features, which specifies an interface for accessing vector feature data. OGC API processes, which specifies an interface for accessing implementations of executable processing algorithms. OGC API coverages, which specifies an interface for accessing coverage data such as raster data. OGC API joins, which specifies an interface for accessing feature collections that have been joined in the same way as you find with relational databases. These OGC API standards are designed to enable implementations and deployment in a variety of ways. For instance, they can be deployed as microservices or deployed as single solutions that integrate multiple OGC API standards implementations. On this slide, you can see an illustration whereby various building blocks from different OGC API standards have been integrated to build a single solution that addresses a variety of use cases. The standards are designed to be implemented by any web API, and to support that, we publish API definition documents that conform to the Open API specification. Those are published through services such as Swagger Hub, and also through tools such as Redoc, which you can see screenshots of on this slide. The API definition documents are published together with the various schemas and other components that form the building blocks that enable web APIs to interoperate in a consistent way. Along with the API definition documents, we also publish various additional resources to enable developers to rapidly implement OGC API standards. What you can see on this slide are examples of some of those resources. For instance, along with standards, along with the standards documents, which you see on the top left and top middle, we also publish e-learning resources, which provide developers with some learning material to help them get started with implementation of OGC API standards. And you can see a screenshot on the top right. We also work with alliance partners such as the International Organization for Standardization, also known as ISO, as well as other standards development organizations. We work with them to assist them in the adoption of OGC standards, OGC API standards. What you can see on the bottom left is a screenshot of from ISO 19168-1, which is the ISO version of OGC API features part 1. On the bottom middle, you can see a screenshot from Swagger Hub showing an example API definition document for OGC API features part 1. We also publish compliance testing tools to enable developers to test their products to validate whether their products correctly implement the relevant OGC API standards. To support the development of these standards, OGC runs a very active innovation program that conducts several projects, research and development initiatives a year. Within those initiatives, we bring together multiple OGC members. You can see logos from some of those members. We bring them together to try out various technologies and identify lessons and also identify potential requirements that can be integrated into OGC standards. So those initiatives apply various science and technology approaches for collective problem solving, and that helps to drive and enable integration across a variety of solutions. And that also leads to best practice documents and open standards. We run several of these innovation program initiatives a year. You can see on this slide some examples. For instance, we recently conducted the Interoperable Simulation and Gaming Code Sprint. We also ran a pilot on integrated digital built environment, which looked into the building information modeling approach, or BIM. We are also running a pilot on climate change resilience and are running pilots on disaster resilience and federated marine spatial data infrastructure, health spatial data infrastructure, smarter cities, and finally, we run the testbed series. OGC has a testbed series which covers a variety of topics. The lessons from these initiatives inform the work that is done by the standards working groups to specify the actual requirements that go into standards documents. So why do OGC standards matter? OGC standards make a positive impact on business. They improve interoperability between various solutions and products. They help to reduce the risk of vendor lock-in. They also accelerate the development of solutions. And this is done by enabling various products to be integrated seamlessly. OGC standards also reduce the cost of developing new capabilities, meaning that solutions implementers can integrate capabilities from third-party products in order to build new solutions and new capabilities. OGC standards also make an impact on policy. On this slide, you can see several examples of national, international policies and strategies that make reference to OGC standards. I'll highlight a few. For instance, within the European Union, there's the Inspire Directive and its implementation rules that make reference to various OGC standards. Within the United Kingdom, the National Geospatial Strategy makes reference to the OGC. And then within the United Nations, the UN Expert Group on Global Geospatial Information Management works together with the OGC and other standards development organization to develop and maintain an online guide on the role of standards in geospatial information management. So how can you get involved? You can get involved in OGC standards development activities by participating in discussions on OGC's public GitHub repositories. You can participate in those discussions. You can also file issues on the GitHub repositories if you come across any problem or any idea that you might have to improve an OGC standard. You can file an issue on an OGC GitHub repository. You can also submit pull requests, which are change proposals for various OGC standards through the OGC GitHub repositories. You can also join working groups at OGC. We have various types of working groups. For instance, standards working groups. These are groups that work on the actual standards. They specify the requirements that go into those standards and manage the progress of the standards through the product life cycle. We also have domain working groups. These are groups that work on technology or domain-specific requirements for interoperability. Please do keep in mind that you need to be an OGC member to join a standards working group. Now, if you're an implementer of products, you can get your product certified as OGC compliant. The OGC compliance program provides the resources, procedures, and policies for certifying products for compliance to one or more OGC standards. The purpose of the program is to increase systems interoperability while reducing technology risk. So if you're an implementer, you can test your product, and if it passes the relevant compliance tests, you can apply to have the product certified as OGC compliant. You will receive a badge that looks as shown on this slide, and as well as confirmation that you can then advertise your products as certified OGC compliant, and that will help reassure customers and potential customers that your products correctly implement the relevant OGC standards. And that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for listening.